So today we're talking about G-Cloud and the benefit. I'm Sarah Hurrell. I'm the Commercial Director for Technology. If you want to follow me on Twitter, I'm Sarah Hurrell UK, or I'm under Government Procurement, which is what is the handle for Crown Commercial Service. And I'm going to talk today about both G-Cloud and digital services. And I think there's some misunderstanding, so part of the reason for pulling them both together is to try and clear up potential misunderstandings. So first of all, just to explain what Crown Commercial Service is, because a lot of people are still not too familiar, we have three parts. We have commercial delivery, which is where I sit, we have policy, and we have advisory services. So the idea being that we will support the government agenda for transformation, the government agenda for saving money, and the government agenda for making things simple and easy. This is my team's strategic context, which in a nutshell means making sure that we are able to offer departments the right services in line with the digital agenda. So my team works hand in glove with GDS, and we make sure that we are able to meet the user needs defined by the digital agenda. We also work hand in glove with the departments, and sometimes they sort of have to do one step before they can do the second step. So we are focused on trying to bring the right solution for our market. I also spend an inordinate amount of my time with suppliers, both the large suppliers and the SMEs, and part of it is listening to suppliers about what we can do better and basically stealing ideas of innovation and challenge so that we can actually be better. This is my category, just to give you a flavour for what we do. So we've got the verticals, the different areas. So cloud and services is where G-Cloud and digital services sit. We also have network services, software licensing. This is a team of specialists looking at making sure that we don't pay unnecessary skis on software. And we've got tech products, which is where commodity hardware and software sits. Why have I bothered to tell you that? Well, partly because I wanted to explain where G-Cloud as a commercial vehicle fits. Because I think G-Cloud, for me, is a commercial vehicle, but I understand that and I recognise that in industry it's become a brand name, and the brand name of G-Cloud is about working with SMEs. And I work with SMEs across the piece in all of this. So it's not just, to me, working with SMEs is not just G-Cloud, making innovative changes is not just G-Cloud, it's across the piece. So typically now my commercial vehicles are a maximum of 2 years. We're making significant changes for an agile way forward, and what we're trying to do is make sure it's right horses for courses. So if you're a supplier here today, please look wider than G-Cloud. G-Cloud, I love G-Cloud. It is the right thing. Please don't misunderstand me, but there are other ways to sell to government as well. So just wanted to give that backdrop. There's a load of commercial agreements going through. I thought a SME agenda in action, this doesn't mean to say I'm anti-big companies. I'm not. I'm just trying to make sure we use the right fit for the right service. So for G-Cloud 6, we have the majority of companies are actually SMEs. For digital services, the majority of the companies are SMEs, but there are still some large enterprises as well. And we've just given a rough flavour here to give you some ideas. I also, in my area, do strange things like traffic management technology. So we buy street lights and we buy traffic lights. So I don't want people to misunderstand and think we sell everything on G-Cloud. We don't. So G-Cloud, to me, is a procurement vehicle, compliant, regulated and refreshed. It is a great innovation. It provides flexible contractual arrangements for cloud-based services. It supports a SME agenda, and it's an online catalogue. It's all of those things, and it's brilliant. A quick history of G-Cloud. It was created in 2012 between CCS and the Cabinet Office for commodity cloud-based services. So it actually stands for Government Cloud. And the way we have to work is we have to work within European regulations of purchasing, and we have to do a PIN, which is an information notice to say what we're going to do. And so the G-Cloud PIN has always been around cloud services, software as a service, platform as a service, infrastructure as a service, and some speciality services to support that. So that, to me, is what G-Cloud is. From 2013, the strategy and the market engagement moved from Cabinet Office to GDS, who's still in Cabinet Office, so it's a very small change. And it was originally fronted by the Cloud Store front end, which Tony referred to, but as of a few months ago, we now have the Digital Marketplace front end. So in my simplistic head, Digital Marketplace or Cloud Store are the front end where you would access the services, and behind it, if I was drawing a simple box diagram, are the procurement vehicles, and one of them is G-Cloud, and it is the one that is mainly accessed at the moment by Digital Marketplace, but the plan is to put other procurement vehicles selling other services behind that. And it's a joint strategic direction. So Tony and I are very much joined at the hip to try and make sure we do the right thing by the departments, the suppliers, the UK. History of digital services. So this is another procurement vehicle. It commenced December 2012 in Discovery. It was all from day one. It was a joint CCS and GDS initiative. There's been extensive market engagement. In 2013, it was let as an iterative framework, 175 suppliers, 83% SMEs. Now, have we had any complaints about digital services? Yes, we have. Do we get things right perfectly first time? No, we're probably not going to even get them right on 10th time. But it's part of what we're trying to do here is rather than wait 5 years to come up with something that's perfect, by which time it's out of date, we're doing agile in our own way that we're working. So Digital Services 1, was the starting point. Digital Services 2, which we've just been completing the procurement process, and we'll be awarding or have awarded soon. And the Digital Services 2 was a evolutionary change from DS1. We took feedback, there were some contentious issues, so let's deal with contentious issues first. We took feedback from suppliers that they didn't like the reverse auction to get on the framework. Because we have to issue a PIN, if we'd completely removed that, we would have had to delay DSF2 by 3 months to go through that process again. So what we did was we listened to what suppliers said, we listened to what customers said, and the compromise, and it was a compromise, we recognised that, was to say, actually, at the commodity level of providing services, we will put those through a reverse auction, and the higher end we won't, because we understood that, you know, how do you value an expert in the field? And if you start making it based on price rather than on quality, that would basically cause you problems. So we've taken some significant steps to try and improve iteration 2, but it is only an evolutionary change. We are planning for Digital Services 3, which is due out later this year, a revolutionary change. And so I know that Tony's very keen to hear feedback for people that want to see different things in DS3. Certainly in my experience, we want to hear different things, how we can make it better and easier. But I think sometimes people can get hung up on one tiny bit and throw the baby out with the bathwater. At the end of the day, this is a really good thing that we're doing here. We're allowing government to buy from a load of digital experts across the country to provide the digital by default agenda to the nation. And sometimes we can get hung up on one little bit of a procurement rather than thinking about what's the best picture and look at where we are now from 2 years ago or 4 years ago. So that's my bit of my soapbox. So G-Cloud, I mentioned this before, has 4 lots: infrastructure, platform, software, and specialist cloud services. There are all kinds of myths that it's for paper clips and you can do anything, video editing. Those myths come out. They are not true. It is government cloud. That's what it's for. Its features, we've covered some of those with Tony, so I won't bore you, but it's a lot of suppliers. A lot of them are SMEs. It's different because it's on supplier terms and conditions. It requires an intelligent customer to look and to assess different offers across G-Cloud, which for most people these days would be the digital marketplace front end. So looking at digital marketplace, they would look at effectively the G-Cloud part of digital marketplace and see what the offers are. A maximum of a 2-year call-off, so very iterative, changing. And we've just done G-Cloud 6, and we will be doing G-Cloud 7 in the next few months. So it is continually to evolve, it is continuing to improve, and it's continuing to grow. Low barrier to entry, so it's one of the more simplest ways, and still that might seem like a nightmare if you're a SME, first time dealing with government. you should see the red tape that has been cut away across all of tech area. I still got quite a bit of it, but when I landed, I had procurements where it was 1,000 pages for the ITT to go out, and we've basically been culling and cutting. But in an agile way, sometimes we have to do the 80-20 rule and get things out because we still have to provide the police with PCs or with infrastructure as a service. So we're moving forward in the right direction. We don't have it perfect yet, but we're not telling you we've got it perfectly yet. Look at where we were from 2 years ago, and you'll see we were a substantially better place. Staying on G-Cloud, you need to submit your management information, and you need to stay compliant. There's sometimes cases of people not some pushing the boundaries a bit too far. We have a team now of assurance experts to try and avoid that happening. And the idea is that you play by the rules and we play by the rules. So there's a couple of points. Once we get into G-Cloud 7, we have to go by EU regulation. So this is not, we think, computer says no when we're being awkward, but we have to follow certain criteria. Otherwise, we could get sued by everybody else involved in this. And when you start looking at the numbers of people on G-Cloud, that would be a large number. So I got a letter was recently sent to a minister requesting somebody to be added to G-Cloud, even though they didn't quite manage to press the button on their application. Now, if I let that person on, it's not me being awkward, turning that very, very good company down, but if I let that person down, then I can open the floodgates to everybody that's on there complaining that I haven't followed my transparent process and suing me if they win any business, and also anybody that wanted to join, and we would just die. So it's not that we want to be awkward, it's just we have to work in a regulated environment, and we try and streamline it and simplify it as much as possible. We don't streamline it as much as I want, but we are definitely making vast improvements. And service definition, my top tip, if you are on G-Cloud, either now or you're planning to be on there, one of the big improvements with Digital Marketplace over Cloud Store is the search functionality. And sometimes we can get very parochial in how we sell our stuff, and we've got a fantastic brand name that we understand, and we expect somebody in the Home Office to search for our brand name, even though we're a SME based in Scotland and they've never heard of the brand name. So you do need to think about how you're going to come up in the correct search engine. So this isn't about planting buzzwords so people find you, but it's thinking about, if I was a customer, if I was in the health service, if I was in the Home Office, what would I be looking for such that my product would be my answer, would be the answer. So very carefully think about what your summary few sentences are about your product on G-Cloud, because there's a lot of really good stuff on there, and sometimes it requires people with a PhD to know what it does before that they can buy it. So try and make it easy for your customers. At the end of the day, it is a catalogue. When you look on Amazon, if you don't know what you're looking for and people haven't thought outside the box, it never comes up in a search. So just think about that if you're on G-Cloud. And don't waste time submitting out-of-scope services. So this is the contact information. I've got a couple of my team here for, I'm due to speak at another event later today, so I've left a couple of my team to be sacrificial lambs to questions, such that if people have questions, you can ask them. I don't know if you'd like to stand up so people can identify your apologies for this for them. But so if you want to know any more about the procurement part of G-Cloud or digital services, those are my two lambs to the slaughter. Please be gentle with them, otherwise they won't want to come again. And thank you very much.
Hi, I'm Harry Metcalfe from DXW. I've been making a bit of a fuss about DSF. I think everyone here would agree that G-Cloud has been a stunning success. It's confusing to many of us in the supplier community that Agile Dev has been removed from the scope of the framework, given that it's been such a successful way to procure those services. Many of us are wondering what it is about G-Cloud that makes it an inappropriate way for those services to be bought.
So it was the reason Agile development was on G-Cloud was because we didn't have digital services when we launched G-Cloud. The reason Agile development is not on G-Cloud is because we are trying to simplify procurement so that you buy it from one place for government rather than having to enter 15 different lots of procurement vehicles. The digital services framework has been specifically designed to make it easier for customers to be intelligent and to make it easier for people to understand what they've got. So the contracts and the commercials are made to be clearer, to make sure that we understand up front what we're getting under discovery and through the different stages. So it has been specifically designed to support agile development. So it would seem a bit odd to then have actually you can have agile and it's discovery and it's £4,000 and you can't negotiate what you get for your price because it's buy it as you see it on G-Cloud, which is the way G-Cloud should work. This is what you do. So it is the wrong place to buy agile because it doesn't provide... Now I get that for some people is tough. We are in Digital Services 2. We will be soon having Digital Services 3. If you're doing agile services, the correct framework is Digital Services.
A follow-up, if I may.
Yep, one.
So I appreciate what you're saying, and I also appreciate that G-Cloud is often not used in the way that it is intended to be used, or for the services that it was intended to be used for. But my feeling is that when you design something for one purpose and then you find that actually people find a really cool other way to use this thing, and it really works. I don't think anyone here would say that G-Cloud has been a bad way for them to procure dev, or that G-Cloud is more confusing to users than Digital Services Framework, which has been so bad that nobody's really used it.
That's not true, actually.
Well, I've seen tenders withdrawn. I've seen PTMEs that no one's replied to. I've seen tenders that have been won by one company because only one company replied to it. I saw on the pin that £40 million worth of services were supposed to go through it, and that's only been about 8. So I don't think we can really say that DS1 has worked in its current form.
26 has gone through it rather than 8. What we saw.
My apologies, I must be out of date.
Yeah, so what we found.
I don't want to. Can I just get my question and I'll shut up? I'm sure other people want to get in as well. My broader point is G-Cloud has worked really well, and it strikes me as very strange that instead of iterating and building on that approach and addressing whatever problems with G-Cloud make it inappropriate for dev, that we've gone off in this completely other direction, which has introduced a load of problems and confusion. If we've got this model that works, why don't we fix what's wrong with that? Whatever's wrong with that makes it wrong for dev, and then use that, whether it's part of the same framework or a different one. G-Cloud should be lighting the way.
Sorry, could I just...
Yeah, please.
Sorry. If I just add to that, I mean, I really welcome Harry's blog on digital service, because it's only knowing where things need to improve and where they may not be working, are we going to get it right? So we are about to kick off a new discovery phase for digital services. I don't know what the outcome of that will be, obviously, because it is a discovery, and we are looking to involve as many users within that as we can. And certainly, Harry, your blog will be a key part of that.
Presumably, moving the Lot 4 stuff off into DSF does mean you're going to take a hit on G-Cloud figures, though, for the next couple of months, right?
We're not expecting to see a substantial hit because the other services are rolling, because often the development was used to get people onto infrastructure or platforms, so the other lots are all growing anyway, and it's all, at the end of the day, one digital story, and we're spending the same amount of money as government. It's just trying to spend it efficiently.
Well, I think, Stuart, as well, it was going back to the point I was making in my in the presentation around, it's a total value going to the marketplace that really matters, not the individual frameworks. So yes, I mean the amount of spend going through digital services is only about half of what it should be. So what do we need to do to actually make that ramp up as well? And looking at it as one whole. And
just to feed on that, again, apologies for boring you with naval contemplating level detail. The way the EU regs work, if we say, put a pin out and say it's going to do 20 million and it gets to 20 million, then that's closed and we have to redo it. So if we think of a number, we always put it much higher than we think it's going to be because we don't want to have to redo things because they've been successful and topped out. So if it says 40 million, that doesn't necessarily mean that 40 million is expected. It means we put a margin for error in there so that we don't have to top out halfway through. Because as soon as we get to 40 million, we have to close it. That's EU regs. It's not my choice. That's just the way it works. So do bear that in mind. It's not necessarily us being naive or stupid. It's us trying to get the right outcome and avoid rework by the suppliers re-entering the frameworks and by us having to redo work.
Okay, any more questions?
So on that point, and with so many stupid things in EU regulations, what are we doing to get those changed?
So there's been a huge amount of work, and so one of the reasons that CCS was created was to bring the policy team in together to the same entity. So we actually had a more joined up approach to this, and there have been quite a lot of changes introduced in EU law, which are due to come into UK law around about the new Parliament sort of time. The exact date, I'm not totally sure. But, and we have made some substantial changes to allow us to do things like add new providers on the fly and other work. The problem with some of those is they come with a cost. So at the current way it is worded, we can add new flyers on the fly, but we have to respond within about 10 working days to anyone that wants to add themselves to it. So if we take the volume of G-Cloud and I put it onto a dynamic purchasing system, chances are I will be non-compliant within the first week because I'm going to get sudden deluge and I won't be able to deal with it. So we are going to have to introduce these in our way of working in a systematic way so that we don't accidentally miss our expectations or fail, because that won't help any of us. So there are changes coming through. G-Cloud was very good at getting around a lot of the EU regs, and that's why we like G-Cloud. Digital services is also helping us get around a lot of those. So we're looking at creative ways, but we are where we are.
Okay, any last questions? Around here.
Thanks, Chris Farthing of ViceCloud. Thanks very much for the presentations. Love G-Cloud and DS to a point. One of the things I find about G-Cloud is the openness and transparency of the data is fantastic. Will we start seeing that with DS as well?
Yes.
So when we see the publication of the 26 mil spend?
That certainly should be.
As soon as I finish copying.
Yeah. that we publish the DS figures regularly as well. So if it's not been published, it will be published in a matter of days or weeks. We have to go through a sign-off process when we release it. It will just be a timing issue.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, well,
I don't think that's really been. We haven't seen any data as detailed as on G-Cloud as we've seen for DSF. There's been no data for DSF as detailed as G-Cloud. G-Cloud, we get spending data down to the invoice.
Okay, I will take that away and look at it. It may be that it's just not getting pushed out properly. I will definitely look at that.
okay, well, with that, time has kind of beaten us. Sarah, Tony, I think it's time you go back to your bed and get yourself sorted out. Sarah, good luck with your presentation. Thank you very much indeed both for coming today. Thank you.